Chapter 26. The deceased Odintsov had not liked innovations, but he had tolerated the fine arts within a certain sphere, and had in consequence put up in his garden between the hothouse and the lake an erection after the fashion of a Greek temple made of Russian brick. Along the dark wall at the back of this temple or gallery were placed 6 niches for statues, which Odintsov had proceeded to order from abroad. These statues were to represent solitude, silence, meditation, melancholy, modesty, and sensibility. One of them, the goddess of silence, with her finger on her lip, had been sent and put up, but on the very same day some boys on the farm had broken her nose. And though a plasterer of the neighborhood undertook to make her a new nose, twice as good as the old one, Odintsov ordered her to be taken away. And she was still to be seen in the corner of the threshing barn where she had stood many long years, a source of superstitious terror to the peasant women. The front part of the temple had long been overgrown with thick bushes. Only the pediments of the columns could be seen above the dense green. In the temple itself it was cool even at midday. Anna Sergeyevna had not liked visiting this place ever since she had seen a snake there, but Katya often came and sat on the wide stone seat under one of the niches. Here, in the midst of the shade and coolness, she used to read and work, or to give herself up to that sensation of perfect peace known, doubtless, to each of us, the charm of which consists in the half-unconscious, silent listening to the vast current of life that flows forever both around us and within us. The day after Bazarov's arrival, Katya was sitting on her favorite stone seat, and beside her again was sitting Arkady. He had besought her to come with him to the temple. There was about an hour still to lunchtime. The dewy morning had already given place to a sultry day. Arkady's face retained the expression of the preceding day. Katya had a preoccupied look. Her sister had, directly after their morning tea, called her into her room, and after some preliminary caresses, which always scared Katya a little, she had advised her to be more guarded in her behavior with Arkady, and especially to avoid solitary talks with him, as likely to attract the notice of her aunt and all the household. Besides this, even the previous evening Anna Sergeyevna had not been herself, and Katya herself had felt ill at ease, as though she were conscious of some fault in herself. As she yielded to Arkady's entreaties, she said to herself that it was for the last time. Katerina Sergeyevna, he began with a sort of bashful easiness, since I've had the happiness of living in the same house with you, I have discussed a great many things with you. But meanwhile, there is one very important, for me, one question which I have not touched upon up till now. You remarked yesterday that I have been changed here, he went on, at once catching and avoiding the questioning glance Katya was turning upon him. I have changed, certainly a great deal, and you know that better than anyone else, you to whom I really owe this change. I? Me? Said Katya. I am not now the conceited boy I was when I came here, Arkady went on. I've not reached 23 for nothing. As before, I want to be useful. I want to devote all my powers to the truth. But I no longer look for my ideals where I did. They present themselves to me much closer to hand. Up till now, I did not understand myself. I set myself tasks which were beyond my powers. My eyes have been opened lately, thanks to one feeling. I'm not expressing myself quite clearly, but I hope you understand me. Katya made no reply, but she ceased looking at Arkady. I suppose, he began again, this time in a more agitated voice, while above his head a chaffinch sang its song unheeding among the leaves of the birch. I suppose it's the duty of everyone to be open with those people who, in fact, with those who are near to him, and so I resolved. But here Arkady's eloquence deserted him. He lost the thread, stammered, and was forced to be silent for a moment. Katya still did not raise her eyes. She seemed not to understand what he was leading up to in all this, and to be waiting for something. "I foresee I shall surprise you," began Arkady, pulling himself together again with an effort, "especially since this feeling relates in a way, notice, to you. You reproached me, if you remember, yesterday with a want of seriousness." Arkady went on, with the air of a man who has got into a bog, feels that he is sinking further and further in at every step, and yet hurries onwards in the hope of crossing it as soon as possible. That reproach is often falls on young men even when they cease to deserve it, and if I had more self-confidence... "Come, help me, do help me," Arkady was thinking in desperation, but as before, Katya did not turn her head. If I could feel sure of what you say," was heard at that instant the clear voice of Anna Sergeyevna. Arkady was still at once, while Katya turned pale. Close by the bushes that screened the temple ran a little path. Anna Sergeyevna was walking along it, escorted by Bazarov. Katya and Arkady could not see them, but they heard every word, the rustle of their clothes, their very breathing. They walked on a few steps, and as though on purpose, stood still just opposite the temple. "You see," pursued Anna Sergeyevna, "you and I made a mistake. We are both past our first youth, I especially so. We have seen life. We are tired. We are both, why affect not to know it, clever. At first we interested each other, curiosity was aroused, and then I grew stale," put in Bazarov. "You know that was not the cause of our misunderstanding. But however it was to be, we had no need of one another. That's the chief point. There was too much, what shall I say, that was alike in us. We did not realize it all at once. Now, Arkady..." "Do you need him?" queried Bazarov. "Hush, Evgeny Vasilyevich. You tell me he is not indifferent to me, and it always seemed to me he liked me. I know that I might well be his aunt, but I don't wish to conceal from you that I have come to think more often of him. In such youthful, fresh feeling there is a special charm." "The word fascination is most usual in such cases," Bazarov interrupted. The effervescence of his spleen could be heard in his choked, though steady voice. "Arkady was mysterious over something with me yesterday, and didn't talk either of you or of your sister. That's a serious symptom." "He is just like a brother with Katya," commented Anna Sergeyevna, "and I like that in him, though perhaps I ought not to have allowed such intimacy between them." "That idea is prompted by your feelings as a sister?" Bazarov brought out, drawling. "Of course. But why are we standing still? Let us go on. What a strange talk we are having, aren't we? I could never have believed I should talk to you like this. You know, I am afraid of you, and at the same time I trust you, because in reality, you are so good. In the first place, I'm not in the least good, and in the second place, I have lost all significance for you, and you tell me I am good. It's like laying a wreath of flowers on the head of a corpse." "Evgeny Vasilyevich, we are not responsible," Anna Sergeyevna began, but a gust of wind blew across, set the leaves rustling, and carried away her words. "Of course you are free," Bazarov declared after a brief pause. Nothing more could be distinguished. The steps retreated. Everything was still. Arkady turned to Katya. She was sitting in the same position, but her head was bent still lower. "Katerina Sergeyevna," he said with a shaking voice and clasping his hands tightly together, "I love you forever and irrevocably, and I love no one but you. I wanted to tell you this to find out your opinion of me and to ask for your hand, since I am not rich and I feel ready for any sacrifice." "You don't answer me? You don't believe me? Do you think I speak lightly? But remember these last days. Surely for a long time past you must have known that everything, understand me, everything else has vanished long ago and left no trace. Look at me. Say one word to me. I love you. Believe me. Katya glanced at Arkady with a bright and serious look. And after long hesitation, with the faintest smile, she said, yes. Arkady leaped up from the stone seat. Yes! You said yes, Katerina Sergeyevna. What does that word mean? Only that I do love you, that you believe me, or I daren't go on. Yes, repeated Katya. And this time he understood her. He snatched her large, beautiful hands, and, breathless with rapture, pressed them to his heart. He could scarcely stand on his feet, and could only repeat, Katya, Katya, while she began weeping in a guileless way, smiling gently at her own tears. No one who has not seen those tears in the eyes of the beloved knows yet to what a point, faint with shame and gratitude, a man may be happy on earth. The next day, early in the morning, Anna Sergeyevna sent to summon Bazarov to her boudoir, and with a forced laugh handed him a folded sheet of notepaper. It was a letter from Arkady. In it he asked for her sister's hand. Bazarov quickly scanned the letter and made an effort to control himself that he might not show the malignant feeling which was instantaneously aflame in his breast. So that's how it is, he commented. And you, I fancy, only yesterday imagined he loved Katerina Sergeyevna as a brother. What are you intending to do now? What do you advise me? Asked Anna Sergeyevna, still laughing. Well, I suppose, answered Bazarov, also with a laugh, though he felt anything but cheerful, and had no more inclination to laugh than she had. I suppose you ought to give the young people your blessing. It's a good match in every respect. Kirsanov's position is passable. He's the only son, and his father's a good-natured fellow. He won't try to thwart him. Madame Odintsov walked up and down the room. By turns, her face flushed and grew pale. You think so, she said. Well, I see no obstacles. I am glad for Katya, and for Arkady Nikolaevich, too. Of course, I will wait for his father's answer. I will send him in person to him. But it turns out, you see, that I was right yesterday when I told you we were both old people. How was it I saw nothing? That's what amazes me. Anna Sergeyevna laughed again and quickly turned her head away. The younger generation have grown awfully sly, remarked Bazarov, and he too laughed. Goodbye, he began after a short silence. I hope you will bring the matter to the most satisfactory conclusion, and I will rejoice from a distance. Madame Odintsov turned quickly to him. You are not going away. Why should you not stay now? Stay. It's exciting talking to you. One seems walking on the edge of a precipice. At first one feels timid, but one gains courage as one goes on. Do stay. Thanks for the suggestion, Anna Sergeyevna, and for your flattering opinion of my conversational talents. But I think I have already been moving too long in a sphere which is not my own. Flying fishes can hold out for a time in the air, but soon they must splash back into the water. Allow me, too, to paddle in my own element. Madame Odintsov looked at Bazarov. His pale face was twitching with a bitter smile. This man did love me, she thought, and she felt pity for him, and held out her hand to him with sympathy. But he, too, understood her. No, he said, stepping back a pace. I'm a poor man, but I've never taken charity so far. Goodbye, and good luck to you. I am certain we are not seeing each other for the last time, Anna Sergeyevna declared with an unconscious gesture. Anything may happen, answered Bazarov, and he bowed and went away. So you are thinking of making yourself a nest, he said the same day to Arkady as he packed his box, crouching on the floor. Well, it's a splendid thing, but you needn't have been such a humbug. I expected something from you in quite another quarter, perhaps though it took you by surprise yourself. I certainly didn't expect this when I parted from you, answered Arkady. But why are you a humbug yourself, calling it a splendid thing as though I didn't know your opinion of marriage? Ah, my dear fellow, said Bazarov. "How you talk. You see what I'm doing? There seems to be an empty space in the box, and I am putting hay in. That's how it is in the box of our life. We would stuff it up with anything rather than have a void. Don't be offended, please. You remember, no doubt, the opinion I have always had of Katerina Sergeyevna. Many a young lady's called clever simply because she can sigh cleverly. But yours can hold her own. And indeed, she'll hold it so well that she'll have you under her thumb. To be sure, though, that's quite as it ought to be." He slammed the lid, too, and got up from the floor. "And now, I say again, goodbye. For it's useless to deceive ourselves. We are parting for good, and you know that yourself. You have acted sensibly. You're not made for our bitter, rough, lonely existence. There's no dash, no hate in you. But you've the daring of youth and the fire of youth. Your sort, you gentry, can never get beyond refined submission or refined indignation. And that's no good. You won't fight, and yet you fancy yourselves gallant chaps. But we mean to fight. Oh, well. Our dust would get into your eyes. Our mud would bespatter you, but yet you're not up to our level. You're admiring yourselves unconsciously. You like to abuse yourselves, but we're sick of that. We want something else. We want to smash other people. You're a splendid fellow, but you're a sugary, liberal snob for all that. Et voilà tout, as my parent is fond of saying. You are parting from me forever, Yevgeny, responded Arkady mournfully. And have you nothing else to say to me? Bazarov scratched the back of his head. Yes, Arkady, yes, I have other things to say to you, but I'm not going to say them. Because that's sentimentalism. That means mawkishness. And you get married as soon as you can, and build your nest, and get children to your heart's content. They'll have the wit to be born in a better time than you and me. Aha, I see the horses are ready. Time's up. I've said goodbye to everyone. What now, embracing, eh? Arkady flung himself on the neck of his former leader and friend, and the tears fairly gushed from his eyes. That's what comes of being young, Bazarov commented calmly. But I rest my hopes on Katerina Sergeyevna. You'll see how quickly she'll console you. Goodbye, brother, he said to Arkady when he had got into the light cart, and pointing to a pair of jackdaws sitting side by side on the stable roof, he added, That's for you. Follow that example. What does that mean? Asked Arkady. What? Are you so weak in natural history, or have you forgotten that the jackdaw is a most respectable family bird? An example to you. Goodbye. The cart creaked and rolled away. Bazarov had spoken truly. In talking that evening with Katya, Arkady completely forgot about his former teacher. He already began to follow her lead, and Katya was conscious of this, and not surprised at it. He was to set off the next day for Marino to see Nikolai Petrovich. Anna Sergeyevna was not disposed to put any constraint on the young people, and only on account of the proprieties did not leave them by themselves for too long together. She magnanimously kept the princess out of their way. The latter had been reduced to a state of tearful frenzy by the news of the proposed marriage. At first, Anna Sergeyevna was afraid the sight of their happiness might prove rather trying to herself, but it turned out quite the other way. This sight not only did not distress her, it interested her. It even softened her at last. Anna Sergeyevna felt both glad and sorry at this. It's clear that Bazarov was right, she thought. It has been curiosity, nothing but curiosity, and love of ease, and egoism. Children, she said aloud, what do you say, is love a purely imaginary feeling? But neither Katya nor Arkady even understood her. They were shy with her. The fragment of conversation they had involuntarily overheard haunted their minds. But Anna Sergeyevna soon set their minds at rest. And it was not difficult for her. She had set her own mind at rest. Chapter 27. Bazarov's old parents were all the more overjoyed by their son's arrival, as it was quite unexpected. Arina Vlasyevna was greatly excited and kept running backwards and forwards in the house, so that Vasily Ivanovich compared her to a hen partridge. The short tail of her abbreviated jacket did, in fact, give her something of a bird-like appearance. He himself merely growled and gnawed the amber mouthpiece of his pipe, or, clutching his neck with his fingers, turned his head round as though he were trying whether it were properly screwed on. Then, all at once, he opened his wide mouth and went off into a perfectly noiseless chuckle. "I've come to you for 6 whole weeks, Governor," Bazarov said to him. "I want to work, so please don't hinder me now." "You shall forget my face completely if you call that hindering you," answered Vasily Ivanovich. He kept his promise. After installing his son as before in his study, he almost hid himself away from him, and kept his wife from all superfluous demonstrations of tenderness. "On Anyusha's first visit, my dear soul," he said to her, "we bothered him a little. We must be wiser this time." Arina Vlasyevna agreed with her husband, but that was small compensation, since she saw her son only at meals, and was now absolutely afraid to address him. "Anyushenka," she would say sometimes, and before he had time to look round, she was nervously fingering the tassels of her reticule and faltering, never mind, I only..." And afterwards she would go to Vasily Ivanovich, and her cheek in her hand would consult him. "If you could only find out, darling, which Anyusha would like for dinner today, cabbage broth or beetroot soup." "But why didn't you ask him yourself?" "Oh, he will get sick of me." Bazarov, however, soon ceased to shut himself up. The fever of work fell away, and was replaced by dreary boredom or vague restlessness. A strange weariness began to show itself in all his movements. Even his walk, firm, bold, and strenuous, was changed. He gave up walking in solitude and began to seek society. He drank tea in the drawing room, strolled about the kitchen garden with Vasily Ivanovich, and smoked with him in silence. Once even asked after Father Alexei. Vasily Ivanovich at first rejoiced at this change, but his joy was not long-lived. "Anyusha's breaking my heart," he complained in secret to his wife. "It's not that he's discontented or angry. That would be nothing. He's sad. He's sorrowful. That's what's so terrible. He's always silent. If he'd only abuse us. He's growing thin. He's lost his color." Mercy on us," whispered the old woman. "I would put an amulet on his neck, but of course he won't allow it." Vasily Ivanovich several times attempted in the most circumspect manner to question Bazarov about his work, about his health, and about Arkady. But Bazarov's replies were reluctant and casual, and once noticing that his father was trying gradually to lead up to something in conversation, he said to him in a tone of vexation, "Why do you always seem to be walking round me on tiptoe? That way's worse than the old one." There, I meant nothing," poor Vasily Ivanovich answered hurriedly. So his diplomatic hints remained fruitless. He hoped to awaken his son's sympathy one day by beginning, apropos of the approaching emancipation of the peasantry, to talk about progress. But the latter responded indifferently. "Yesterday I was walking under the fence and I heard the peasant boys here, instead of some old ballad, bawling a street song. That's what progress is." Sometimes Bazarov went into the village, and in his usual bantering tone entered into conversation with some peasant. "Come," he would say to him, "expound your views on life to me, brother. You see, they say all the strength and future of Russia lies in your hands. A new epoch in history will be started by you. You give us our real language and our laws." The peasant either made no reply, or articulated a few words of this sort. "Well, we'll try, because, you see, to be sure..." "You explain to me what your mir is," Bazarov interrupted. "And is it the same mir that is said to rest on 3 fishes?" That, little father, is the earth that rests on three fishes, the peasant would declare soothingly, in a kind of patriarchal, simple-hearted sing-song. And over against ours, that's to say, the mere, we know there's the master's will, wherefore you are our fathers, and the stricter the master's rule, the better for the peasant. After listening to such a reply one day, Bazarov shrugged his shoulders contemptuously and turned away, while the peasant sauntered slowly homewards. What was he talking about? Inquired another peasant of middle age and surly aspect, who at a distance from the door of his hut had been following his conversation with Bazarov. Arrears? Eh? Arrears? No, indeed, mate, answered the first peasant, and now there was no trace of patriarchal sing-song in his voice. On the contrary, there was a certain scornful gruffness to be heard in it. Oh, he clacked away about something or other, wanted to stretch his tongue a bit. Of course, he's a gentleman. What does he understand? What should he understand? Answered the other peasant. And jerking back their caps and pushing down their belts, they proceeded to deliberate upon their work and their wants. Alas, Bazarov, shrugging his shoulders contemptuously, Bazarov, who knew how to talk to peasants, as he had boasted in his dispute with Pavel Petrovich, did not in his self-confidence even suspect that in their eyes he was all the while something of the nature of a buffooning clown. He found employment for himself at last, however. One day Vasily Ivanovich bound up a peasant's wounded leg before him, but the old man's hands trembled, and he couldn't manage the bandages. His son helped him, and from time to time began to take a share in his practice, though at the same time he was constantly sneering both at the remedies he himself advised and at his father, who hastened to make use of them. But Bazarov's jeers did not in the least perturb Vasily Ivanovich. They were positively a comfort to him. Holding his greasy dressing gown across his stomach with 2 fingers and smoking his pipe, he used to listen with enjoyment to Bazarov. And the more malicious his sallies, the more good-humoredly did his delighted father chuckle, showing every one of his black teeth. He used to even repeat these sometimes flat or pointless retorts, and would, for instance, for several days, constantly, without rhyme or reason, reiterate, "Not a matter of the first importance," simply because his son, on hearing he was going to early mass, had made use of that expression. "Thank God he has got over his melancholy," he whispered to his wife. "How he gave it to me today, it was splendid." Moreover, the idea of having such an assistant excited him to ecstasy, filled him with pride. "Yes, yes," he would say to some peasant woman in a man's cloak and a cap shaped like a horn as he handed her a bottle of Goulard's extract or a box of white ointment. "You ought to be thanking God, my good woman, every minute that my son is staying with me. You will be treated now by the most scientific, most modern method. Do you know what that means? The Emperor of the French, Napoleon even, has no better doctor." And the peasant woman, who had come to complain that she felt so sort of queer all over, the exact meaning of these words she was not able, however, herself to explain, merely bowed low and rummaged in her bosom, where 4 eggs lay tied up in the corner of a towel. Bazarov once even pulled out a tooth for a passing peddler of cloth. And though this tooth was an average specimen, Vasily Ivanovich preserved it as a curiosity, and incessantly repeated as he showed it to Father Alexei, "Just look, what a fang! The force Yevgeny has! The peddler seemed to leap into the air. If it had been an oak, he'd have rooted it up." "Most promising," Father Alexei would comment at last, not knowing what answer to make and how to get rid of the ecstatic old man. One day a peasant from a neighboring village brought his brother to Vasily Ivanovich, ill with typhus. The unhappy man, lying flat on a truss of straw, was dying. His body was covered with dark patches. He had long ago lost consciousness. Vasily Ivanovich expressed his regret that no one had taken steps to procure medical aid sooner, and declared there was no hope. And in fact, the peasant did not get his brother home again. He died in the cart. 3 days later, Bazarov came into his father's room and asked him if he had any caustic. "Yes, what do you want it for?" I must have some to burn a cut. For whom? For myself. What? Yourself? Why is that? What sort of a cut? Where is it? Look here on my finger. I went today to the village, you know, where they brought that peasant with typhus fever. They were just going to open the body for some reason or other, and I've had no practice of that sort for a long while. Well, so I asked the district doctor about it, and so I dissected it. Vasily Ivanovich all at once turned quite white, and without uttering a word rushed to his study, from which he returned at once with a bit of caustic in his hand. Bazarov was about to take it and go away. For mercy's sake, said Vasily Ivanovich, let me do it myself. Bazarov smiled. What a devoted practitioner. Don't laugh, please. Show me your finger. The cut is not a large one. Do I hurt? Press harder, don't be afraid. Vasily Ivanovich stopped. What do you think, Yevgeny? Wouldn't it be better to burn it with hot iron? That ought to have been done sooner. The caustic even is useless, really, now. If I've taken the infection, it's too late now. How? Too late? Vasily Ivanovich could scarcely articulate the words. I should think so. It's more than 4 hours ago. Vasily Ivanovich burned the cut a little more. But had the district doctor no caustic? No. How was that, good heavens, a doctor not have such an indispensable thing as that? You should have seen his lancets, observed Bazarov as he walked away. Up till late that evening and all the following day, Vasily Ivanovich kept catching at every possible excuse to go into his son's room. And though far from referring to the cut, he even tried to talk about the most irrelevant subjects. He looked so persistently into his face and watched him in such trepidation that Bazarov lost patience and threatened to go away. Vasily Ivanovich gave him a promise not to bother him, no more readily as Arina Vlasyevna, from whom of course he kept it all secret, was beginning to worry him as to why he didn't sleep and what had come over him. For 2 whole days he held himself in, though he didn't at all like the look of his son, whom he kept watching stealthily. But on the 3rd day, at dinner, he could bear it no longer. Bazarov sat with downcast looks and had not touched a single dish. Why don't you eat, Yevgeny? He inquired, putting on an expression of the most perfect carelessness. The food, I think, is very nicely cooked. I don't want anything, so I don't eat. Have you no appetite? And your head, he added timidly, does it ache? Yes, of course it aches. Arina Vlasyevna sat up and was all alert. Don't be angry, please, Yevgeny, continued Vasily Ivanovich. Won't you let me feel your pulse? Bazarov got up. I can tell you without feeling my pulse. I'm feverish. Has there been any shivering? Yes, there has been shivering too. I'll go and lie down and you can send me some lime flower tea. I must have caught cold. To be sure, I heard you coughing last night, observed Arina Vlasyevna. I've caught cold, repeated Bazarov. And he went away. Arina Vlasyevna busied herself about the preparation of the decoction of lime flowers, while Vasily Ivanovich went into the next room and clutched at his hair in silent desperation. Bazarov did not get up again that day, and passed the whole night in heavy, half-unconscious torpor. At 1 o'clock in the morning, opening his eyes with an effort, he saw by the light of a lamp his father's pale face bending over him, and told him to go away. The old man begged his pardon, but he quickly came back on tiptoe, and half hidden by the cupboard door, he gazed persistently at his son. Arina Vlasyevna did not go to bed either, and leaving the study door just open a very little, she kept coming up to it to listen how Anyusha was breathing, and to look at Vasily Ivanovich. She could see nothing but his motionless, bent back, but even that afforded her some faint consolation. In the morning, Bazarov tried to get up. He was seized with giddiness. His nose began to bleed. He lay down again. Vasily Ivanovich waited on him in silence. Arina Vlasyevna went in to him and asked him how he was feeling. He answered, better, and turned to the wall. Vasily Ivanovich gesticulated at his wife with both hands. She bit her lips so as not to cry and went away. The whole house seemed suddenly darkened. Everyone looked gloomy. There was a strange hush. A shrill cock was carried away from the yard to the village, unable to comprehend why he should be treated so. Bazarov still lay, turned to the wall. Vasily Ivanovich tried to address him with various questions, but they fatigued Bazarov, and the old man sank into his armchair, motionless, only cracking his finger joints now and then. He went for a few minutes into the garden, stood there like a statue, as though overwhelmed with unutterable bewilderment. The expression of amazement never left his face all through, and went back again to his son, trying to avoid his wife's questions. She caught him by the arm at last, and passionately, almost menacingly, said, "What is wrong with him?" Then he came to himself and forced himself to smile at her in reply. But to his own horror, instead of a smile, he found himself taken somehow by a fit of laughter. He had sent at daybreak for a doctor. He thought it necessary to inform his son of this, for fear he should be angry. Bazarov suddenly turned over on the sofa, bent a fixed, dull look on his father, and asked for a drink. Vasily Ivanovich gave him some water, and as he did so, felt his forehead. It seemed on fire. "Governor," began Bazarov in a slow, drowsy voice, "I'm in a bad way. I've got the infection, and in a few days you'll have to bury me." Vasily Ivanovich staggered back as though someone had aimed a blow at his legs. "Evgeny," he faltered, "what do you mean? God have mercy on you. You've caught cold." "Hush," Bazarov interposed deliberately. "A doctor can't be allowed to talk like that. There's every symptom of infection. You know yourself." "Where are the symptoms of infection, Evgeny? Good heavens!" "Watch this," said Bazarov. And pulling up his shirt sleeve, he showed his father the ominous red patches coming out on his arm. Vasily Ivanovich was shaking and chill with terror. "Supposing," he said at last, "even supposing, if even there's something like infection." "Paemia," put in his son. Well, something of the epidemic." "Paemia," Bazarov repeated sharply and distinctly. "Have you forgotten your textbooks?" Well, as you like. Anyway, we will cure you." "Come, that's humbug. But that's not the point. I didn't expect to die so soon. It's a most unpleasant incident, to tell the truth. You and Mother ought to make the most of your strong religious belief. Now's the time to put it to the test." He drank off a little water. "I want to ask you about one thing, while my head is still under my control. Tomorrow or next day, my brain, will send in its resignation. I'm not quite certain even now whether I'm expressing myself clearly. While I've been lying here, I've kept fancying red dogs were running round me, while you were making them point at me as if I were a woodcock. Just as if I were drunk. Do you understand me all right? I assure you, Yevgeny, you are talking perfectly correctly." "All the better. You told me you'd sent for the doctor. You did that to comfort yourself. Comfort me too. Send a messenger." "To Arkady Nikolaevich?" put in the old man. "Who's Arkady Nikolaevich?" said Bazarov as though in doubt. "Oh, yes, that warbler. No, let him alone. He's turned jackdaw now. Don't be surprised. It's not delirium yet. You send a messenger to Madame Odintsov, Anna Sergeyevna. She's a lady with an estate. Do you know?" Vasily Ivanovich nodded. "Yevgeny Bazarov, say, sends his greetings and sends word he is dying. Will you do that?" "Yes, I will do it. But is it a possible thing for you to die, Yevgeny? Think only, where would divine justice be after that?" "I know nothing about that. Only, you send the messenger." "I'll send this minute, and I'll write a letter myself." "No, why? Say I send greetings. Nothing more is necessary. And now I'll go back to my dogs." "Strange. I want to fix my thoughts on death, and nothing comes of it. I see a kind of blur and nothing more. He turned painfully back to the wall again, while Vasily Ivanovich went out of the study and, struggling as far as his wife's bedroom, simply dropped down onto his knees before the holy pictures. "Pray, Arina, pray for us," he moaned. "Our son is dying." The doctor, the same district doctor who had had no caustic, arrived, and after looking at the patient, advised them to persevere with a cooling treatment, and at that point said a few words of the chance of recovery. "Have you ever chanced to see people in my state not set off for Elysium?" asked Bazarov, and suddenly, snatching the leg of a heavy table that stood near his sofa, he swung it round and pushed it away. There's strength, he murmured. "Everything's here still, and I must die. An old man at least has time to be weaned from life, but well, go and try to disprove death. Death will disprove you, and that's all. Who's crying there?" he added after a short pause. "Mother? Poor thing. Whom will she feed now with her exquisite beetroot soup? You, Vasily Ivanovich, whimpering too, I do believe. Why, if Christianity's no help to you, be a philosopher, a stoic, or what not. Why, didn't you boast you were a philosopher?" "Me, a philosopher?" wailed Vasily Ivanovich, while the tears fairly streamed down his cheeks. Bazarov got worse every hour. The progress of the disease was rapid, as is usually the way in cases of surgical poisoning. He still had not lost consciousness, and understood what was said to him. He was still struggling. "I don't want to lose my wits," he muttered, clenching his fists. "What rot it all is." And at once he would say, "Come, take 10 from 8, what remains?" Vasily Ivanovich wandered about like one possessed, proposed first one remedy, then another, and ended by doing nothing but cover up his son's feet. "Try cold pack, emetic, mustard plasters on the stomach. Bleeding," he would murmur with an effort. The doctor, whom he had entreated to remain, agreed with him, ordered the patient lemonade to drink, and for himself asked for a pipe and something warming and strengthening. That's to say, brandy. Arina Vlasyevna sat on a low stool near the door and only went out from time to time to pray. A few days before, a looking glass had slipped out of her hands and been broken, and this she had always considered an omen of evil. Even Anfisushka could say nothing to her. Timofeich had gone off to Madame Odintsov's. The night passed badly for Bazarov. He was in the agonies of high fever. Towards morning he was a little easier. He asked for Arina Vlasyevna to comb his hair, kissed her hand, and swallowed 2 gulps of tea. Vasily Ivanovich revived a little. "Thank God," he kept declaring. "The crisis is coming. The crisis is at hand." "There. To think now," murmured Bazarov, "what a word can do. He's found it. He's said crisis and is comforted. It's an astounding thing how man believes in words. If he's told he's a fool, for instance, though he's not thrashed, he'll be wretched. Call him a clever fellow and he'll be delighted if you go off without paying him." This little speech of Bazarov's, recalling his old retorts, moved Vasily Ivanovich greatly. "Bravo! Well said! Very good!" he cried, making as though he were clapping his hands. Bazarov smiled mournfully. "So what do you think?" he said. "Is the crisis over or coming?" "You are better, that's what I see, that's what rejoices me," answered Vasily Ivanovich. "Well, that's good. Rejoicings never come amiss. And to her, do you remember, did you send?" "To be sure I did." The change for the better did not last long. The disease resumed its onslaughts. Vasily Ivanovich was sitting by Bazarov. It seemed as though the old man were tormented by some special anguish. He was several times on the point of speaking and could not. "Yevgeny, he brought out at last. "My son, my one dear son." This unfamiliar mode of address produced an effect on Bazarov. He turned his head a little and, obviously trying to fight against the load of oblivion weighing upon him, he articulated, "What is it, Father?" "Yevgeny," Vasily Ivanovich went on, and he fell on his knees before Bazarov, though the latter had closed his eyes and couldn't see him. "Yevgeny, you are better now. Please, God, you will get well, but make use of this time. Comfort your mother and me. Perform the duty of a Christian. What it means for me to say this to you, it's awful, but still more awful. Forever and ever, Yevgeny, think a little what..." The old man's voice broke, and a strange look passed over his son's face, though he still lay with closed eyes. "I won't refuse, if that can be any comfort to you," he brought out at last. "But it seems to me there's no need to be in a hurry. You say yourself I am better." "Oh, yes, Yevgeny, better, certainly, but who knows? It is all in God's hands, and in doing the duty..." "No, I will wait a bit," broke in Bazarov. "I agree with you that the crisis has come. And if we're mistaken, well, they give the sacrament to men who are unconscious, you know." "Yevgeny, I beg." "I'll wait a little. And now I want to go to sleep. Don't disturb me." And he laid his head back on the pillow. The old man rose from his knees, sat down in the armchair, and clutching his beard, began biting his own fingers. The sound of a light carriage on springs, that sound which is peculiarly impressive in the wilds of the country, suddenly struck upon his hearing. Nearer and nearer rolled the light wheels. Now even the neighing of the horses could be heard. Vasily Ivanovich jumped up and ran to the little window. There drove into the courtyard of his little house a carriage with seats for two, with 4 horses harnessed abreast. Without stopping to consider what it could mean, with a rush of a sort of senseless joy, he ran out onto the steps. A groom in livery was opening the carriage doors. A lady in a black veil and a black mantle was getting out of it. "I am Madame Odintsov," she said. "Yevgeny Vasilievich is still living? You are his father? I have a doctor with me." "Benefactress!" cried Vasily Ivanovich, and snatching her hand, he pressed it convulsively to his lips, while the doctor brought by Anna Sergeyevna, a little man in spectacles of German physiognomy, stepped very deliberately out of the carriage. "Still living. My Yevgeny is living, and now he will be saved. Wife! Wife! An angel from heaven has come to us." "What does it mean, good Lord?" faltered the old woman, running out of the drawing room, and comprehending nothing, she fell on the spot in the passage at Anna Sergeyevna's feet, and began kissing her garments like a madwoman. "What are you doing?" protested Anna Sergeyevna. But Arina Vlasyevna did not heed her, while Vasily Ivanovich could only repeat, "An angel, an angel!" "Wo ist der Kranke? And where is the patient?" said the doctor at last with some impatience. Vasily Ivanovich recovered himself. Here, follow me, würdigster Herr Kollege," he added through old associations. "Ah!" articulated the German, grinning sourly. Vasily Ivanovich led him into the study. "The doctor from Anna Sergeyevna Odintsov," he said, bending down quite to his son's ear, "and she herself is here." Bazarov suddenly opened his eyes. "What did you say?" "I say that Anna Sergeyevna is here and has brought this gentleman, a doctor, to you." Bazarov moved his eyes about him. "She is here. I want to see her." "You shall see her, Yevgeny, but first we must have a little talk with the doctor. I will tell him the whole history of your illness, since Sidor Sidorich, this was the name of the district doctor, has gone, and we will have a little consultation." Bazarov glanced at the German. "Well, talk away quickly, only not in Latin. You see, I know the meaning of jam moritur." "Der Herr scheint des Deutschen mächtig zu sein," began the new follower of Aesculapius, turning to Vasily Ivanovich. "Ich glaube, we had better speak Russian," said the old man. So that's how it is, to be sure." And the consultation began. Half an hour later, Anna Sergeyevna, conducted by Vasily Ivanovich, came into the study. The doctor had had time to whisper to her that it was hopeless even to think of the patient's recovery. She looked at Bazarov and stood still in the doorway. So greatly was she impressed by the inflamed and at the same time deathly face with its dim eyes fastened upon her. She felt simply dismayed, with a sort of cold and suffocating dismay. The thought that she would not have felt like that if she had really loved him flashed instantaneously through her brain. "Thanks," he said painfully. "I did not expect this. It's a deed of mercy. So we have seen each other again, as you promised." "Anna Sergeyevna has been so kind," began Vasily Ivanovich. "Father, leave us alone. Anna Sergeyevna, you will allow it, I fancy. Now?" With a motion of his head, he indicated his prostrate, helpless frame. Vasily Ivanovich went out. "Well, thanks," repeated Bazarov. "This is royally done. Monarchs, they say, visit the dying too. Evgeny Vasilyevich, I hope..." Anna Sergeyevna, let us speak the truth. It's all over with me. I'm under the wheel. So it turns out that it was useless to think of the future. Death's an old joke, but it comes fresh to everyone. So far, I'm not afraid, but their senselessness is coming, and then it's all up. He waved his hand feebly. Well, what had I to say to you? I loved you. There was no sense in that even before, and less than ever now. Love is a form, and my own form is already breaking up. Better say how lovely you are. And now, here you stand, so beautiful. Anna Sergeyevna gave an involuntary shudder. Never mind, don't be uneasy. Sit down there. Don't come close to me. You know my illness is catching. Anna Sergeyevna swiftly crossed the room and sat down in the armchair near the sofa on which Bazarov was lying. Noble-hearted, he whispered. Oh, how near and how young and fresh and pure in this loathsome room. Well, goodbye. Live long, that's the best of all. And make the most of it while there is time. You see what a hideous spectacle. The worm half crushed, but writhing still. And you see, I thought, too, I'd break down so many things. I wouldn't die. Why should I? There were problems to solve, and I was a giant. And now, all the problem for the giant is how to die decently. Though that makes no difference to anyone either. Never mind. I'm not going to turn tail. Bazarov was silent and began feeling with his hand for the glass. Anna Sergeyevna gave him some drink, not taking off her glove and drawing her breath timorously. You will forget me, he began again. The dead's no companion for the living. My father will tell you what a man Russia is losing. That's nonsense. But don't contradict the old man. Whatever toy will comfort the child, you know. And be kind to Mother. People like them aren't to be found in your great world if you look by daylight with a candle. I was needed by Russia. Now it's clear. I wasn't needed. And who is needed? The shoemaker's needed. The tailor is needed. The butcher gives us meat. The butcher... Wait a little. I'm getting mixed. There's a forest here. Bazarov put his hand to his brow. Anna Sergeyevna bent down to him. "Evgeny Vasilievich, I am here." He at once took his hand away and raised himself. "Goodbye," he said with sudden force, and his eyes gleamed with their last light. "Goodbye. Listen, you know I didn't kiss you then. Breathe on the dying lamp and let it go out." Anna Sergeyevna put her lips to his forehead. "Enough," he murmured, and dropped back onto the pillow. "Now, darkness." Anna Sergeyevna went softly out. "Well?" Vasily Ivanovich asked her in a whisper. "He has fallen asleep," she answered, hardly audibly. Bazarov was not fated to awaken. Towards evening, he sank into complete unconsciousness. And the following day, he died. Father Alexei performed the last rites of religion over it. When they anointed him with the last unction, when the holy oil touched his breast, one eye opened. And it seemed as though at the sight of the priest in his vestments, the smoking censers, the light before the image, something like a shudder of horror passed over the death-stricken face. When at last he had breathed his last, and there arose a universal lamentation in the house, Vasily Ivanovich was seized by a sudden frenzy. "I said I should rebel," he shrieked hoarsely, with his face inflamed and distorted, shaking his fist in the air as though threatening someone. "And I rebel! I rebel!" But Arina Vlasyevna, all in tears, hung upon his neck, and both fell on their faces together. Side by side, Anfisushka related afterwards in the servants' room. They bowed their poor heads like lambs at noonday. But the heat of noonday passes, and evening comes, and night. And then, too, the return to the kindly refuge, where sleep is sweet for the weary and heavy laden. Chapter 28. 6 months had passed by. White winter had come with the cruel stillness of unclouded frosts, the thick-lying, crunching snow, the rosy rime on the trees, the pale emerald sky, the wreaths of smoke above the chimneys, the clouds of steam rushing out of the doors when they are opened for an instant, with the fresh faces that look stung by the cold and the hurrying trot of the chilled horses. A January day was drawing to its close. The cold of evening was more keen than ever in the motionless air, and a lurid sunset was rapidly dying away. There were lights burning in the windows of the house at Marino. Prokofich, in a black frock coat and white gloves, with a special solemnity, laid the table for 7. A week before, in the small parish church, 2 weddings had taken place quietly, and almost without witnesses. Arkady and Katya's, and Nikolai Petrovich and Fenichka's. And on this day, Nikolai Petrovich was giving a farewell dinner to his brother, who was going away to Moscow on business. Anna Sergeyevna had gone there also directly after the ceremony was over, after making very handsome presents to the young people. Precisely at 3 o'clock, they all gathered about the table. Mitya was placed there too. With him appeared a nurse in a cap of glazed brocade. Pavel Petrovich took his seat between Katya and Fenichka. The husbands took their places beside their wives. Our friends had changed of late. They all seemed to have grown stronger and better looking. Only Pavel Petrovich was thinner, which gave even more of an elegant and grand seigneur air to his expressive features. And Fenichka, too, was different. In a fresh silk gown, with a wide velvet headdress on her hair, with a gold chain around her neck, she sat with deprecating immobility, respectful towards herself and everything surrounding her, and smiled as though she would say, "I beg your pardon, I'm not to blame." And not she alone, all the others smiled, and also seemed apologetic. They were all a little awkward, a little sorry, and in reality, very happy. They all helped one another with humorous attentiveness, as though they had all agreed to rehearse a sort of artless farce. Katya was the most composed of all. She looked confidently about her, and it could be seen that Nikolai Petrovich was already devotedly fond of her. At the end of dinner, he got up and, his glass in his hand, turned to Pavel Petrovich. "You are leaving us? You are leaving us, dear brother," he began. "Not for long, to be sure, but still I cannot help expressing how much we... There, the worst of it is we don't know how to make speeches. Arkady, you speak." "No, Daddy, I've not prepared anything." "As though I were so well prepared. Well, brother, I will simply say, let us embrace you, wish you all good luck, and come back to us as quickly as you can." Pavel Petrovich exchanged kisses with everyone, of course not excluding Mitya. In Fienichka's case, he kissed also her hand, which she had not yet learned to offer properly. And drinking off the glass which had been filled again, he said with a deep sigh, "May you be happy, my friends. Farewell." This English finale passed unnoticed, but all were touched. "To the memory of Bazarov," Katya whispered in her husband's ear as she clinked glasses with him. Arkady pressed her hand warmly in response, but he did not venture to propose this toast aloud. The end, would it seem? But perhaps some one of our readers would care to know what each of the characters we have introduced is doing in the present, the actual present. We are ready to satisfy him. Anna Sergeyevna has recently made a marriage, not of love, but of good sense, with one of the future leaders of Russia, a very clever man, a lawyer, possessed of vigorous practical sense, a strong will, and remarkable fluency. Still young, good-natured, and cold as ice. They live in the greatest harmony together, and will live perhaps to attain complete happiness. Perhaps love. The Princess K is dead, forgotten the day of her death. The Kirsanovs, father and son, live at Marino. Their fortunes are beginning to mend. Arkady has become zealous in the management of the estate, and the farm now yields a fairly good income. Nikolai Petrovich has been made one of the mediators appointed to carry out the emancipation reforms, and works with all his energies. He is forever driving about over his district, delivers long speeches. He maintains the opinion that the peasants ought to be brought to comprehend things. That is to say, they ought to be reduced to a state of quiescence by the constant repetition of the same words. And yet, to tell the truth, he does not give complete satisfaction either to the refined gentry who talk with chic, or depression of the emancipation, pronouncing it as though it were French, nor to the uncultivated gentry who unceremoniously curse the damned emancipation. He is too soft-hearted for both sets. Katerina Sergeyevna has a son, little Nikolai, while Mitya runs about merrily and talks fluently. Fienichka, Fedosya Nikolaevna, after her husband and Mitya, adores no one so much as her daughter-in-law. And when the latter is at the piano, she would gladly spend a whole day at her side. A passing word of Pyotr. He has grown perfectly rigid with stupidity and dignity, but he too is married, and received a respectable dowry with his bride, the daughter of a market gardener of the town, who had refused 2 excellent suitors only because they had no watch. While Pyotr had not only a watch, he had a pair of kid shoes. In the Brühl Terrace in Dresden, between 2 and 4 o'clock, the most fashionable time for walking, you may meet a man about 50, quite gray, and looking as though he suffered from gout, but still handsome, elegantly dressed, and with that special stamp which is only gained by moving a long time in the higher strata of society. That is Pavel Petrovich. From Moscow he went abroad for the sake of his health, and has settled for good at Dresden, where he associates most with English and Russian visitors. With English people he behaves simply, almost modestly, but with dignity. They find him rather a bore, but respect him for being, as they say, a perfect gentleman. With Russians he is more free and easy, gives vent to his spleen and makes fun of himself and them, but that is done by him with great amiability, negligence, and propriety. He holds Slavophile views. It is well known that in the highest society this is regarded as très distingué. He reads nothing in Russian, but on his writing table there is a silver ashpan in the shape of a peasant's plated shoe. He is much run after by our tourists. Matvey Ilyich Kolyazin, happening to be in temporary opposition, paid him a majestic visit, while the natives, with whom, however, he is very little seen, positively grovel before him. No one can so readily and quickly obtain a ticket for the court chapel, for the theater, and such things as der Herr Baron von Kirsanov. He does everything good-naturedly that he can. He still makes some little noise in the world. It is not for nothing that he was once a great society lion. But life is a burden to him, a heavier burden than he suspects himself. One need but glance at him in the Russian church when, leaning against the wall on one side, he sinks into thought and remains long without stirring, bitterly compressing his lips, then suddenly recollects himself and begins almost imperceptibly crossing himself. Madame Kushkin too went abroad. She is in Heidelberg and is now studying not natural science but architecture, in which, according to her own account, she has discovered new laws. She still fraternizes with students, especially with the young Russians studying natural science and chemistry, with whom Heidelberg is crowded, and who, astounding the naive German professors at first by the soundness of their views of things, astound the same professors no less in the sequel by their complete inefficiency and absolute idleness. In company with 2 or 3 such young chemists who don't know oxygen from nitrogen, but are filled with skepticism and self-conceit, and too with the great Elisyevich, Sitnikov roams about Petersburg, also getting ready to be great, and in his own conviction continues the work of Bazarov. There is a story that someone recently gave him a beating, but he was avenged upon him. In an obscure little article hidden in an obscure little journal, he has hinted that the man who beat him was a coward. He calls this irony. His father bullies him as before, while his wife regards him as a fool and a literary man. There is a small village graveyard in one of the remote corners of Russia. Like almost all our graveyards, it presents a wretched appearance. The ditches surrounding it have long been overgrown. The gray wooden crosses lie fallen and rotting under their once painted gables. The stone slabs are all displaced as though someone were pushing them up from behind. 2 or 3 bare trees give a scanty shade. The sheep wander unchecked among the tombs. But among them is one untouched by man, untrampled by beast. Only the birds perch upon it and sing at daybreak. An iron railing runs round it. 2 young fir trees have been planted, one at each end. Yevgeny Bazarov is buried in his tomb. Often from the little village not far off, 2 quite feeble old people come to visit it, a husband and wife. Supporting one another, they move to it with heavy steps. They go up to the railing, fall down and remain on their knees, and long and bitterly they weep and yearn, and intently they gaze at the dumb stone under which their son is lying. They exchange some brief word, wipe away the dust from the stone, set straight a branch of a fir tree, and pray again, and cannot tear themselves from this place, where they seem to be nearer to their son, to their memories of him. Can it be that their prayers, their tears, are fruitless? Can it be that love, sacred, devoted love is not all-powerful? Oh no. However passionate, sinning, and rebellious the heart hidden in the tomb, the flowers growing over it peep serenely at us with their innocent eyes. They tell us not of eternal peace alone, of that great peace of indifferent nature. They tell us, too, of eternal reconciliation and of life without end.
The end. You've been listening to Fathers and Sons by Ivan Turgenev, narrated by George Guidel.